First, we'll consider what's happening around the globe. It looks like based on the pandemic, certain countries have spiked based on their infectious rates and mortality rates. There are other countries that are continuing to spike upwards, and there are other countries and states that are considering reopening their local economies and their economies to the world. We know that other countries like China are a little ahead of the game in doing this, and it looks like California, Washington, and Oregon are going to begin opening their economies as some of the first U.S. states. We'll see how this progresses over the next 24 hours, but the bottom line is that the updates will be rolling, like rolling blackouts. You'll have districts and counties and municipalities, sometimes whole states or countries opening up their economies over the next few weeks. Some countries have extended their deadlines in terms of lockdowns, and that might go into May. It might go into the end of June. We just don't know at this point. This impacts us directly as we are a company that's designed to generate revenue from both enterprises and consumers, and we know that consumer revenue has dropped off a cliff right now, and that's because worldwide there's been a consumer-driven economy, and right now we can see that consumers are not consuming. As an example of this, there were about 50% of Chinese restaurants in the United States that have been closed. There are about 50% of people under 45 in the U.S. out of work. And last week's employment numbers resulted in about 6.6 million filing for unemployment. And this is in the United States alone. This doesn't represent anything that's happening around the world. That's why this whole pandemic is unprecedented in terms of its ripple effects and impact on household finances and corporate and the global economy. In terms of our industry, the natural language processing, natural language understanding, data, machine learning, and artificial intelligence industries. We're continuing to look at companies and individuals, groups, organizations place a focus on analyzing data related to a cure for the pandemic or for the disease COVID-19. And of course, we are doing the same. New information every few hours, new documentation, new information, new research is coming out related to how technologies and new scientific research can be better aimed at coming up with a solution for the virus or the disease COVID-19. The solutions range, the timelines range all over the map, anywhere from 1 month to 12 to 18 to 2 years. We'll talk more about that in a bit. People are looking for, groups and institutions are looking for financial products today. Not so much on the long side. And we're prepared for that, like we've mentioned in former conference calls. On the crypto side, within the crypto industry, it looks like things are stable, and there was a slight spike up. I think it was to about 7,800, and ETH I think went up to about 174, and it's retraced. Both BTC and ETH have retraced, but we are looking for cash to move into crypto. So we're sitting here watching and waiting while we're concurrently delivering. On the internal corporate side, it's steady as she goes. On the engineering side, we have got graph visualizations we're working on. Graph visualizations are important because they help a researcher or a scientist understand relationship networks between either drugs and proteins and protein-to-protein interaction networks, or drugs and other drugs. Approved drug compounds mapped to other drug compounds. Those relationship networks exist when you cluster unsupervised data, and that's what we have available today. So if you want to visit what we're working on, it's going to be very similar to what you'll find at vectorspace.ai/datasets and vectorspace.ai/examples. You'll note that there's a focus on the financial markets with our current data sets we're delivering to Amazon and Microsoft. They have a focus on life sciences. And we want to make sure that before Amazon publishes, they're given a long description that describes how you can use these data sets, in particular, how you can extract clusters and then visualize the graph networks. And it's not just graph networks, it's also heat maps. Heat maps work very well when you look at unsupervised data sets, when you want to look at especially correlation matrix data sets. So Vihar is working on the heat map side, and I think we've got Radek and we've got Magnus. Magnus has been working on the graph side, and we'll see if we can get these QA'd and churned out ASAP. We are waiting to hear back from Amazon, waiting to hear back from their startup person. We've been in communication with them a bit. It's important for everyone to understand that things are very hectic with every company these days. There are a lot of companies preparing to simply file for Chapter 11 bankruptcy. And again, this is unprecedented. And that's because these companies like these their business models have been burned down overnight. And they have to adapt, reconfigure, or do something else. So a lot of these companies are customers of our customers, and they're putting out distress calls in terms of whether or not they can delay payment on bills and do all kinds of things like that. This is what happens during a downturn. We've experienced this a few times before, so we're familiar with it. But to a lot of people, these kind of events with companies being turned to dust or being down-rounded, you can look that up. That's a very interesting term when you consider what's happening in a downturn. It's for a portfolio company from a venture capitalist to be down-rounded. That's one way that founders and founding teams lose interest in a company, or another way that an investment house or a VC company can pit companies against one another to either merge them within their portfolios or to trim the fat. On the engineering side, we've also got updating data sets, and these are pretty key. The reason for that is that you've got companies today already trying to provide search services around COVID-19 research papers. We're probably going to have competitors try to offer certain kinds of data sets. There are already data sets offered related to COVID-19, related to how the pandemic has spread and how it continues to either be mitigated based on social distancing or how it's spreading like wildfire in certain places. Anyway, data sets, there are all kinds of data sets being produced right now. Our data sets, like we've mentioned before, are very unique, and they are correlation matrices. However, we want to make sure that we're first to market with these kinds of data sets. And today, as of today, and I can tell you as of the next few weeks, we certainly will be. Probably as of the next couple of years, in fact. So we're in a good position there. But one of the key aspects of what we offer would be context-controlled data sets, but also data sets that update. Having a static data set that does not update is not very valuable if you've got new research papers coming out every few minutes. So being able to showcase how our data sets are updated is something that we want Amazon to do for us, and they will. So that's going to be good. We're looking forward to that. On the IR and PR side, we have had Bloomberg contact us. This is not the Bloomberg contact we've been in dialogue with over the last few weeks, and it wasn't the Bloomberg contact we were in dialogue with related to BlackRock and Bitvor. This is a new Bloomberg contact. They, out of the blue, I suppose they read our press release, but they contacted us related to a story they're doing on natural language processing and some of the latest AI and machine learning techniques applied to COVID-19 research and solutions. So we'll be interviewing with them this week. The guy's name is Bruce Einhorn there. So we've notified the internal team, and we'll just wait to hear back from them. But hopefully that will be a great story for us. We'll have lots of other stories come out too as soon as Amazon comes out. And on the capital and the funding, let's move to the exchanges side first. Let's wrap up the IR and PR side because everything is predicated on Amazon's announcement. And I'll just remind everyone that Amazon is not just sitting there waiting to announce to the public their collaboration with VectorspaceAI. Obviously, they've got hundreds of thousands of companies they're working with right now. But on the data set side related to COVID-19, they've only got one company they're working with related to data sets related to drug repurposing and establishing hidden connections between genes, drugs, and diseases. And that's us. So we're pretty comfortable there. On the exchanges side, in terms of everything being executed in order, we have mentioned this before, but we are going to be reaching out to exchanges only after we are on the map and not being put on the map by ourselves, but being put on the map by a $1 trillion company or two, and that would be either Microsoft or Amazon. And things have to happen in that order because we want to make sure that we're very well equipped before we go out and negotiate for exchange fee listing fees and all kinds of other things. We also want to be able to offer exchanges the ability to produce their own smart baskets using our technology. So we have a plan of execution, and it is being executed, but there are dependencies, very important for people to understand. On the capital funding and grant side, all ability for a company to raise capital has burned down. Capital raising has changed completely. That always happens at the turn of a black swan event or during an extended turn in the down markets. Your ability to raise capital as a company, it doesn't matter who you are as a company. You could be Citibank or Goldman Sachs. You could be a small person that owns a small shop on the corner. But your ability to raise capital has been changed completely. And our ability to raise capital as a company is really dependent on our ability to deliver and execute. We don't expect to raise a large amount of capital anytime soon. We expect to raise in small tranches that get us to revenue. That's our goal. And we understand that that's a matter of confidence. And confidence connects to how well we deliver and execute and how well the public receives what we've delivered. And the public in this case is defined by scientists and researchers solving for COVID-19. We are looking at trillions right now. Again, completely unprecedented. We're looking at trillions being earmarked, dedicated for funding, not just companies that are ready to go bankrupt or employees that are not being paid or mortgages, leases that are not being paid, but companies, any company that can advise or contribute directly or indirectly to the COVID-19 solution is a company that's going to be funded based on grants and the trillions that are being poured, not just from the United States, but worldwide. We're looking at about 200 funding sources now, 200 grants that are dedicated to funding companies that are solving for COVID-19. And we're one of them. And the buckets or the categories that we've established are based on when these grants need to be submitted. So we've got a date category. We've also got a category for industry, whether or not this grant is related to industry, whether or not it's private in relation to industry, meaning that private investors like angels and VCs are putting together a fund to fund COVID-19 solutions, or whether or not it's an industry private group, a corporation like Amazon or Microsoft, who have dedicated funding to COVID-19. And this would be in the form of concessions or credits or investment into companies. And this connects directly to what we're working on with Amazon. We're going to be working as fast as possible with an investment from Amazon and Microsoft related to COVID-19 into VectorspaceAI. And that, of course, is its own separate series of communications to the public. On the academic side, you've got funding as well. And we have academic collaborations with a number of universities and national labs. So we're good to go there. We might need a private investigator either internally, which I would serve as, or we would use a PI, private investigator on the grant side from either Lawrence Berkeley National Lab, the Biosciences Division, or UCLA or UCSF. There are also grants being given strictly to nonprofit organizations. So we are looking into that, maybe establishing a nonprofit arm. That's just in the analysis period right now. We'll see. Our focus, of course, is revenue. We're revenue-centric, and we want to get there as fast as possible. On the strategy side, and to conclude here, it's very important for people to understand that we are in the business right now of establishing hidden relationships between approved drug compounds and protein-to-protein interaction networks. One of the reasons for this is that a drug compound usually targets a protein, which is a gene, which might be targeted by another drug compound somewhere that's not being talked about. Well, we're here to enable those relationships to rise to the fore. That's what our technology does. That's what the data sets do. So that connects directly to either licensing agreements to biotechs or pharmaceutical companies, which is very common if you've got a natural language processing, artificial intelligence, machine learning approach, and you want to license that approach. It's been historically the case that any bioinformatics efforts can connect possibly to doing revenue share on licensing of the drug. So we'll see about that. There have been several ripple effects, and one of them is drug discovery or drug repurposing, drug repositioning. But a lot of what we've observed is that a lot of people are thinking in terms of timelines. There are some very short-sighted thinkers out there who might be asking, are we done hitting the iceberg yet? And that would just mean, is this COVID-19 scare over yet? Or have cases been flatlining or decreasing, or mortality rates? That's just one sector of worries that the world has to be concerned with now. It's the ripple effects, the economic ripple effects, the unemployment effects, not just locally, but globally. These are going to have unforeseen consequences. Everything that you're hearing in the news and reading are really just guesses, because nobody knows. There's a level of uncertainty here related to something unprecedented that no one can predict. We can only use levels of probability based on either past experience or collecting data points. So we're nowhere near out of the woods with this whole situation that the world is in right now. And although we may have hit the iceberg, this economy is going to have a hard time recovering. And some are guessing that it's going to be after a vaccine is discovered and implemented. Some guess that to be 3 months. Some guess it to be 12 months. Some guess it to be 18 months. Some think the economy's not going to recover for another 2 years. That means we'll be bouncing along the bottom. So this is the message of the markets, and it's important that we pay attention to it. We have public market exposure, and this is something